In this episode, House is telling a story. He's telling you about what happened this week. So it's all subjective. So from a writing standpoint, it's more complex and more interesting. I think more interesting. I guess I shouldn't say that too loud. To write these flashbacks, because the story is constantly shaded with a couple questions. One is, why is House telling us this? It must be something important for him to tell us. Two is, what is House trying to argue with Nolan by telling us this piece of information about what happened this week? And three, what about it is reliable and unreliable? The tricky part in writing is to hit those notes all just right, because you don't want to go so far into the unreliable narrator aspects that we don't believe anything. In that case, we don't have any stakes, we don't have any jeopardy, you don't really believe anything that's going to go wrong with the patient, because it can be whatever House wants it to be. But at the same time, you want to take advantage of this opportunity in playing with that reality. So one way of sort of fooling with those variables of the alternate worlds is that things might appear in stories about the patient, or scenes with the patient, or scenes with House and Wilson that aren't necessarily usually there. So what we decided was that when House is sitting in Nolan's office, he's to some degree maybe daydreaming during the session, particularly if he doesn't believe anything's wrong. So items that he might see in Nolan's office might appear in his sort of telling of the story of what happened to him this week. In each act, there's one item from Nolan's office that's placed in a scene somewhere in that act. In a couple instances, they're pretty easy to spot, and in a couple instances, they're incredibly obscure. I would be shocked if anybody got all 6 of them in our audience, but I would be willing to bet that many people will get a couple. So one of the things that I was particularly interested in writing this episode was the chance to bring back Alvy from Mayfield and Nolan from Mayfield. I think that Alvy has a certain friendship with House, Wilson has a certain friendship with House, I think Nolan has a certain friendship with House, and they're all different, and House relates differently to each of them. I was also interested in House's apartment. House consciously not getting rid of that apartment, not moving all his stuff in with Wilson, that he always had a tie back to his apartment, and I've felt like that's sort of been looming in the background all season. What his apartment symbolizes to me is House's old world, his old lifestyle, his old way of relating to people. And in this way, when he comes back to his old world, and there's Alvy, a tether from his life at Mayfield, it's an interesting way to get us back into House's apartment and House's mindset, and how he makes that transition back. And then when he loses that crutch, sort of the crutch of Alvy, is House able to deal with being back where it was, in a way where he used to use drugs and he used to interact differently with people before he went to Mayfield.